All right, I'm redoing this video a second time. I did the video, and then when you play it back, my voice just slows down in certain spots. I don't know if it got really weird. I was doing a weird video, and the voice went weird. So anyway, as far as DOP, disappearing object phenomenon, someone said could I do a reenactment of losing the gas cap, and after he said that, I started thinking about it, and if you come in at a certain angle with the lawnmower, the cap sits up high, the bush comes out and over, and you can hit the cap and make it come loose. And it has that little like tie wrap on it, which let go, and it didn't break. And then somehow the cap got under the motor, not on the front of on the top of the lawnmower, not on the bottom. So to do a reenactment, it's possible the cap, when I pulled back the lawnmower, it put tension on this cap. It came off, threw it down, it bounced off the deck of the lawnmower, and the cap lodged itself under the motor. I wouldn't be able to do it, but I want to tell you another DOP story, which is very similar, because as I'm thinking about what happened, we had a dryer, a Sears dryer, Lady Kenmore, and I come in out of playing football or outside, and whenever my father had a problem, he would give the problem to me. And he took me downstairs and he says, I have the dryer open, the access port, or the cubby hole, whatever you want to call it, service plate, there's a good word. And he says, the belt seems too long. So he hands me the flashlight. And of course, the flashlights back in those days, you turn them on, you have to tap them. The batteries are always, my father's batteries are always dying. So I'm on my back and I'm looking up in the service hatch. And it looks like the belt is too long. There's nothing to take the belt up. And you can see the motor, you can see the belt, and you can see the belt goes around the drum down to the motor. But it's too long. And I'm looking everywhere, I see nothing. So I basically come to the same conclusion my father came to, is the belt's too long, but that makes no sense at all. You can't stretch one of those belts. It's like a Gates. I think the company was Gates. Well, anyway, my mother just happens to say that Aunt Mildred has the same dryer. So I take the tools and I go running up. She's about 6 blocks away. I go in a cubby, her dryer room with the washing machine dryer, the laundry room. There's the word. And I go in there. I lay on my back. I take the plate off. I look up in there, and there on the side, inside, is an arm. It's mounted to the side, and it's spring-loaded. And I look it all over, and I'm like, okay, I'm missing this arm with a pulley. It's spring-loaded. Where is it? Now, did my father take the hatch plate off, take that unit out and set it down, and then forget? So I close the hatch plate up. I go back home, and I come through the door. My father says, what's up? I said, there's a take-up arm with a pulley on it. I said, did you take that out? Maybe put it. No, I didn't take it out. So I get down there, and I'm laying on my back, and I'm looking up in there. You know, of course, you're playing with the flashlight, trying to get a beam. And I noticed there's a little square area that it is possible that that thing's made to jump loose if the dryer is ever overloaded. And then it jumps loose and it drops down, but it didn't drop down. I think it got hooked on the belt itself, got pulled up into that access hole. So I don't remember how I found it, but I might have pulled the dryer out, or maybe. Well, anyway, I got that unit in my hand. I showed it to my father. He didn't want to have nothing to do with it. He was like, that thing's possessed. It's voodoo. And he let me reinstall it. It has these little slots in the side of the metal, and then matching little tabs. You push it into position. You slide it into position. It goes into these tabs. You pull down on the arm, and the arm comes back up, and it puts tension on the belt. So now you push the button on the dryer works. So I start questioning my mother what happened, because it got overloaded. And basically she said that she put, I think, maybe 2 comforters in there, something like that, bedspreads, comforters, and they were quite wet. And she said she hit the button, and then she could hear the motor running, but the drum wasn't spinning, and that's how that started. But when you're laying there looking at something, and it doesn't make any sense. You're looking at a belt that's too long, and it's not a belt that could be stretched. And then my mother said, Aunt Mildred's got the same unit. I'm like, I'm going there. Uh, I'm totally perplexed. I'm laying on my back. I'm looking through the service hatch, and there's nothing there but that belt, the pulley on the motor. That's it, and the drum. You're looking up. Is it up around the drum? No. But what happened was it probably it was a combination of it jumping loose, which it's supposed to, but then it's supposed to drop down. So it jumped loose, and probably the belt and everything was still spinning. It pulled the unit, the pulley, spring-loaded pulley assembly up into the top of the dryer, up near where the timer and all that is. But I stay with stuff, and I told you once before on something that I couldn't explain right away. But I was at the Waters Dairy in North Arlington, River Road. It's now a Reader's, and you got to picture this. They have a coffee maker, and it has 2 glass bowl coffee pots. I'm not a coffee guy, but they're coffee pots. They're glass though, and they're oval shaped. That's the best I can describe them. And there's writing on the oval shaped thing. So it's in the window. There's a ledge around the window, and that's where the coffee machine sits. Now the sun can come up in through that window at a certain angle, certain times of the year, and it can hit that coffee pot, that urn, and it's one of them has hot water or water in it, and then you dump it into the unit, and then coffee comes out into the second urn. So there's always one that's got water in it ready to go to make another pot of coffee. There might be 3 total. I don't remember. I'm not a coffee person. So at this point, the sun comes through the window. It hits this glass urn that's just got plain water in it. The urn itself is oval shaped like a lens, and it's got writing on it. How to clean it, watch out, don't do this to it, don't do that to it. So the sun hits that. Now it projects, because it's an oval shaped urn, it's sort of a lens. Now the writing on it gets projected. Now what made it all happen, and it never happened before, was there was a refrigerator there that was supposed to have Snapple products in it, and that went out for repair. So there was a big open wall, and they either wiped it down, it was white, they wiped the wall down, or they repainted it. So now the letters from the urn are being projected on the wall. Now they're either we're upside down, I know they're backwards, and maybe upside down. And the girl in the dairy points to the wall, and she's all upset. And it does. It looks like a message from God. That's all I'm going to say. I stood there, and when I first looked at it, that's a freaking message from God. I'm thinking that, but in my mind, I remember that when I was a kid, when we would see movies in Jefferson School, in the auditorium, or in the gymnasium, or the room in the cellar, when the movie would first start, a couple kids would put their hands up. I can actually tell you the kid's name. And he would do shadow puppets real quick before the movie would start. So I remember seeing the movie projected on his hand. He's blocking it to make his shadow puppet. So I immediately put my hand into the beam and follow it back to the window, to the urn. And as I turn the urn back and forth to show the girl, that's where the lettering's coming from, the sun jumps behind a cloud, or the cloud covers the sun. The sun doesn't really move like that. And that was that. But if I hadn't figured out that it was the urn, all these things came together to form a message from God. But I have a certain reflex to everything. Put my hand in the beam, follow it back. Okay, it's not a message from God. It's writing on the urn to tell you how to clean it or handle it. Don't break it. Don't put it on a cold surface. Don't all that's on there. Be careful. Don't spill it on yourself. And anyway, that's backwards and maybe upside down, projected on the wall in bigger letters because it's real tiny letters on the urn. That's that one. Now, I told you once before about the guy that just disappears. So we had this this favorite sleigh hill next to our house. It was an easement. And we decided to go up the next street and sled in this other area and try to make it all the way down to our area. And then, anyway, didn't work. So we're up there and we're all sitting on the sleds bullshitting. And all of a sudden we see a guy coming along and he's got a dog. Now, when you're a kid and you're down that low sitting on a sled, you worry if the dog is on a leash or not. So as we all look at the man with the dog, there's heat lightning, a flash of heat lightning, and the guy's gone. He's gone. Now, in my mind, he's gone. I'm thinking exactly the same as everybody else, but I'm like, nah. Yeah. A few seconds later, I'm like, nah, that couldn't have happened. I ain't gonna accept that. So those guys had to go home. So the next night, I went up there with somebody else, and I was sitting on the side. I said, I was here last night, and there was a guy walking right over there. See that spot? He's walking over there, and there's a flash of lightning. And the kid that went with me, a little older, he goes, "Oh, that's heat lightning. That happens during the winter." He says, "You just never noticed it before." I said, "Yeah, the guy's walking. There's a flash, and then the guy disappears." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So now we know there's heat lightning in the wintertime. And just before we push off on the sleds, he says, "Here comes the guy." And there's the dog. And as he's walking along, he disappears. So I was like, that's what happened last night, only there was a flash. So I think I went back the next day or whatever, maybe the next time the guy come by, whatever it was, I talked to the guy. And when I walked up there, he took some slats out of the fence. And he would step through the fence. And the runner for the slats is still there, and the upper one's still there. And he would step through, and the dog would jump through. So for an instant, he'd be on one side of the fence, the other. And when I talked to him, he just said, "I take the slats out during the winter, and that's so I can take the dog down in the cellar and clean his paws up before I take him upstairs, and he isn't dripping wet with snow." And I said, okay. So I had the whole thing. And the other guys, when I tried to tell them the story, they weren't buying anything. But it was so funny when I did this video just a few minutes ago. It started to go like that. I was like, I'm watching the video over to make sure it all come out right. And some of the, right around the message you got it. I was like, oh, no way. But that's how life is. Now, when I went to work with the video to upload it, Norton was rearing its ugly head. So, I don't know. I don't know what caused it, but in order to play it back slower, right, it would have to record it faster. It makes no sense. This is what I'm telling you about in life. Disappearing objects phenomenon, ghosts, spirits. If you want to go to a haunted house and look around, you're already biased. You go into the haunted house, you're already biased that there's going to be spirits in that house. All right? So you're biased. So any noises, I had a kid come to my house one time, and if I was in my dad's workshop and the wind was blowing on the house, the beams over my head in the cellar, I should know, they're joists. I could lift up on them because I'm 6'1". I put my hand up there and lift up and make the same creaking noise. And the kid goes, "Stop that, you're freaking me out." I'm like, "Dude, it's creaking wood." Oh, no. Now, he believes in spirits. He wanted to go home right away. So, it's all about biasing and stuff like that. And then when you don't stay with something, when you lose it, like I also, at the last one, I started telling the story about the keys, but I went off about silver mica in the radio. My sister was a heavy smoker, and the smoke would get in the radio and cause the capacitors in the IF cans to go black. And if you took the radio out of the car and it would be in a warm place that was dry, the radio would start working again. You couldn't find it. Well, I know it's silver mica. I know it's in the IF cans. But when I was taking the radio in and out one day, I had my keys. And I dropped the keys, and they hooked on the wire that comes out of the radio. I carried the radio down and put it on my workbench. Now I'm cleaning the car, and I'm going to go down and work on the radio. I can't find my keys. And finally, at the end of the day, looking for these keys in the car and trying everything, I said, well, let me look at the radio. And there were the keys, and they were tangled on the wire. There's only one wire that comes out of a car radio, and that's the B plus wire. It goes over like to the fuse box or whatever. The other thing's a jack for the mobile Motorola plug, and the other thing is the ground of the chassis of the radio. But for years, I couldn't figure out why these radios would crackle. And then when I took them out of the car, they would work on the bench. And that's because these people are heavy smokers. And you would get nicotine buildup inside the IF can on those capacitors. You see, if you watch, you read up on the silver mica and watch the videos where the guy has to go in there and cut those things out because they turn black. The silver on the capacitors, it oxidizes and shorts out the capacitor. But there's a lot to in the world. But when something goes wrong, I stay with it, and it becomes painful. But no, I can't do a reenactment of how that cap jumped off it popped off the lawnmower, and the little tiny zip line that's supposed to hold it onto the lawnmower. You unscrew the cap and it drops down, and it's got this little piece of plastic that holds it there until you're done filling, and you pick the cap back up and put it back on. That let loose without breaking. That's what I was amazed at also. But you know, I don't know how exactly the cap got off, and it wasn't just, it was wedged under the motor. So when I tipped the motor up to look for the cap on the ground or maybe up underneath on the blade, it didn't come out. See, that's the thing about the whole thing. The more you think about it, the more you'll, holy crap. See, that's what holy crap things are. The more you look at them, you go, the odds of that, the odds of that. And a good movie about this is called Fate is the Hunter. These guys have to land an airplane on a shore, on the ocean shore, but they hit a dock. And just before they got this message that the motors were failing, the guy had spilled something into the console. So they were getting a false reading. So they landed the plane on the beach and hit a dock, and people got injured or whatever it is. It's Fate is the Hunter, I think, the movie. And the dock was slated to be taken down months ahead. No one ever got to it. So that's what the story is, you know, Fate is the Hunter. And they reenact the whole thing where the guy spills the stuff into the, go look at that movie. But there's a setup of a bunch of things that go wrong. And if any one of them didn't happen, the major problem wouldn't have happened. And that's how life is. Sometimes it takes more than one mess up for the catastrophe to happen. I think that's it. All right, that's it. Let's hope the voice don't do that.